Thanks for checking out this episode of the Always Forward podcast. This community exists for everyone, whether you're an elite athlete, fitness enthusiast, business owner, leader, student, parent, or pretty much anything else. This content is for you. What unifies our listeners is a passion to improve themselves in order to impact the world. Make sure to check out our website and follow us on Instagram for more content like workouts, previous episodes, and articles. Also, make sure to visit our online store for Always Forward apparel and other merchandise. This episode is a part of our Be More Human series. In this series, we are focusing on different aspects of what it means to be human, how we've strayed from our original design, and helpful ways to take back control of our lives by living with passion and purpose. If you enjoy the episode, take a second to leave us a review and share it with a friend.
Before jumping into the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Pursue Outfitters and Tennessee Pre. Check out Pursue Outfitters apparel at pursueoutfitters.com. Check out Tennessee Pre. Unstack your stack with Tennessee Pre. Your focus and energy will be incredible.
So let's talk about the 5 P's of being human.
Okay, well, let's kind of break it down. What are your 5 P's?
So the reason we want to talk about this, so the 5 P's being purpose, priorities, principles, perspective, and perseverance. Those are the 5 P's. And so, again, just for total transparency, this is all borrowed, stolen, and, readapted to myself personally from other people. So you're going to hear this stuff. Like these 5 P's are on a TED Talk. These 5 P's are on a Chasing Excellence podcast. They're kind of all over the place. And so really this is just one possible framework for how to best systemize kind of your purpose, your like the way in which you live
Day to day.
Yeah. So the reason for this conversation now is we kind of got into the conversation a bit in our last podcast episode with John Hipp, and it just kind of came up just because this is so vital in living an actively purposeful life. These 5 P's are kind of meant to set you up to not trip from thing to thing, but instead to move purposely from decision to decision, to make the big picture decisions that help you make the small day-to-day decisions. And so just felt like it would be appropriate to talk about the 5 P's now, just because following up the conversation with John Hipp, I think would be really useful. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I like what you said. It's like not stumbling as you're like moving, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the whole point of having this like guideline
Right.
of, okay, if I get to this fork in the road, I know where I'm going to go.
Yeah, as
Kinda like
you're
automatically.
right. Yeah, because you're going to be faced with decisions. We probably should have looked up that statistic. We both know it, like how many decisions you're faced with in a day.
Gosh.
Like it's thousands. Yeah. How many? Like you have Google? You have Google there?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, just ask us how many decisions in a day?
Let's go ahead. If you type it in the comments, how many decisions do you think?
It's thousands. Yeah. How many?
Yes, it's in the thousands.
Yeah,
more than the thousands.
Yeah, what is it?
It's estimated that the average adult makes about 35,000 remotely conscious decisions each day.
Yeah, so we're not even aware of that. Like that's saying that it's 35,000 conscious decisions that we're not even really aware of. So
like we're not really making
and then you just add in like the subconscious nature of what happens day to day as well. And if all we are is victim to those decisions coming up, like you said, the forks in the road, it's not like you're just moving along a straight path and all of a sudden there's one fork in the road. It's constant. Like you have the constant opportunity to move 1,000 different directions with different decisions that you can make. Apparently 35,000 different decisions you can make on a daily basis. And so these 5 P's are just kind of the attempted framework to help you avoid having to make the decisions. You come to that fork in the road and it's just so obvious which direction you're supposed to go because you've already made the decision 1,000 steps ago, that the steps forward are a lot more simple and a lot more clear. So it's just, it's living with that like true north, that clear perspective, that clear vision for who you are that helps you make those 35,000 decisions without really even having to make them, so
make it easy. That's I'm a big tree nerd just from kind of my background. So it's like
a what?
Tree nerd.
Okay.
Tree nerd.
Okay.
I like trees. So trees always grow towards the light.
Okay.
So if you're always true north,
Sure.
and
Okay.
you're always
I'm
growing
understanding, yeah.
toward the
Right.
light because
Yeah.
trees branch.
Right.
But if you're always going, if you're always going true north, right? You're always going
Yeah.
to the light.
Yeah.
You'll never go wrong.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So this is basically determining what that is and what that means for you
Exactly.
and your character, and your purpose. And I just think that's so important because in the midst of having this conversation about what it means to be human, really what we're combating is that concept and that idea that you are a victim to your circumstances. You are nothing better than a series of tripping from one decision to another. You wake up and the day controls you versus you controlling the day. However you want to approach that, however you want to it's all semantics really in the end of 1,000 different ways we can describe that. But it's really saying that you are, you're just a part of this system of what day-to-day life and what society and our current culture has created, versus living purposefully into whatever you do. And so it's just a big part of taking back control, living with passion, living with purpose, living for the sake of impact. So I think it's super important. It made a massive, massive difference. In fact, I took some time after I kind of heard the 5P talk. I took some time to do it myself, and it was pretty easy to put pen to paper when the time came because I had been considering this stuff. I had been wrestling with it. I had it written down at different points and at different times. I had considered vision and all of that. So when the time came to put pen to paper in a structured format, it came pretty easily. And when I did it, I took a day to myself, went away, just kind of got quiet and wrote this stuff out. And when I held the paper and I looked at it after I had filled it out, I was like, oh my gosh, there are 3 pretty big decisions that I know I need to make right away to fit this framework that I'm saying is my life at this point. And so it was big for me. I think it's so important. And there are a lot of different ways you can do this. And what was cool in the conversation in the last podcast with John Hipp is we stumbled into this conversation because his was totally different. His true north, his core values, his 5 Ps were not 5 Ps. It was totally different how it came to him. But there were these clarifying attributes, these clarifying principles that guided him to realize he wasn't where he wanted to be. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. He wasn't on the trajectory he needed to be. And it was time to take back control of that. And so this can look a lot of different ways. This is more of just kind of like a motivating, charge, or even
It's
almost
a guideline, really.
Yeah, and this episode is almost like an ask for people to just think about it.
Yeah.
If it's not the 5 Ps, fine. Just think about something that would help you define who you are, that identity aspect of who you are, and then begin to make decisions to live into that. So, yeah.
So that you kind of touched on how did you come up with this, right? You kind of had that awe-inspiring kind of okay, I'm unplugging myself from the matrix is what we kind of talked about, right? That's in essence what you just did.
Yeah,
you literally
absolutely.
unplugged yourself.
Yeah,
and so
for sure.
kind of walk us through that a little bit, and then we can kind of tap into making the big decision, right?
Yeah.
That is the 5 Ps. Kind of let's kind of clarify kind of what those mean, right? What each of those mean.
Sure.
And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So what the big decision is in the first P or
first, what is that first big decision that you have to make, right? You have to start somewhere, and this is kind of for all of our listeners and for everybody.
Sure.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Where does that start begin?
I think that beginning point is a willingness to do some self awareness checking, some self analyzation. I think it means taking a hard, potentially long and very honest look at your life, and not from a dissatisfied, discontent, or selfish, childish point of view, going, is this what I want? Not in that I don't know if this is what I want way, but in a way of going, is this right? Is what I'm doing right? Is it consistent with what I am convicted by? Is it consistent with what I believe? Is it consistent with the things I'm passionate about? Is it am I living in line with what it feels like I was created to do? And I think that most people, if they are honest, are not doing the thing that they wish they could do And even if the thing doesn't matter, they're not doing it the way in which they feel like they want to do it. And that, I don't know if that's confusing, but like, it's rarely the thing that matters as much as the way you do the thing. And so we miss both of those almost all the time. So like, these 5 Ps will, for the most part, not lead people to a career change, though it should some people. It's not going to lead people to a career change as much as it's going to lead them to a different perspective and a different purpose and passion within that career. To that same point, these 5 Ps should never lead you, other than very specific circumstances. These 5 Ps should never lead you out of like a committed marriage relationship.
Yep.
It should completely change your perspective about that relationship.
It should make it stronger.
Absolutely. It should change your perspective about that and cause you to take ownership in it. It should cause you to recognize that maybe there are some missing pieces in it. It's not about recognizing maybe some dissatisfaction and then getting rid of it. It's about recognizing some dissatisfaction and taking ownership over it.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do to address that? What are you supposed to do to change that? And so I think that the first step certainly is a sense of self-awareness, a hard look at your life, at your relationships, at your job, at your career, at all of that. And for some people, I think it can be surface level. I think it's vocation. I think it is career. For other people, I think it's more character driven, because unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, if you ask them to take this hard, long look at, is what you're doing consistent with what you believe? The first thing they're going to realize is that they don't know what they believe. They don't know what they stand for, like they're not operating with this deep sense of conviction in which their life means something, because they don't know what they believe. No. They don't know what the bigger picture is. There is that lack of perspective, to where at best we may just be pursuing the American dream that is, fickle in the end. So yeah, I think that first step is just a hard self-aware observation, a look in the mirror. Yeah.
Self-assessment. That's in essence what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's hard because there's not like all right, I got a 7 out of 10 on this one.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I got a 3 on this one. And so it's like you said, self-assessment, and then kind of looking through those all aspects of your life and kind of grading yourself.
Yeah.
And like, hey, and it's not black and white. We're not saying it's black and white. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of gray.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's okay. Like, you understand. It's like we're kind of like colorblind, right?
Yeah.
Like to this like black and white, like we're kind of like in this gray zone where it's like, man, like that looks like it's right.
Yeah.
Okay, but once my actions become louder than words, okay, no.
Yeah, man, and I think that's everything. Like I think a pursuit of being able to clearly identify those black and white aspects of life of this means this and this means this, or it is either this or this. I think that's a fruitless pursuit, just because I do believe that as human beings, the majority of life is lived in that gray area.
Yep.
And these 5 Ps are really supposed to help you navigate the gray area, not get rid of it. Because you can't get rid of it, honestly. And
you can't escape it.
Like, no, you can't. And so
you can't lock yourself up in your bedroom and not talk to anybody.
Well, you can, but then that eliminates the primary purpose of existence, which is that sense of like impact and relationship, and you were created for purpose, and I guarantee you the purpose wasn't isolation. And so it's that statement that like everyone is a saint in isolation, because what do they have to compare to? And so the second you step out into the world, those 35,000 daily decisions hit you, and you're faced with not just what am I going to do, but who am I going to be?
Yeah.
Like, who am I going to be in the pursuit of what I do? And so, that self-assessment is huge. And I don't know, maybe we could develop some self-assessment questions. I think you could probably just ask Siri and she would give you plenty. And so, there's probably a ton of these self-assessment tools online, and we can post a few resources, some things that I used. I am a huge fan of the Enneagram. I think it's big. Again, just for that sense of self-realization, that sense of self-assessment. And so we can post some resources along with this podcast to kind of have that conversation with yourself, because that is certainly the first step.
That's the base. Like, kind of have our base here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of build on that base.
Yep.
If I assess myself and I know, okay, I need to change something, but I don't know how to change it.
Yeah.
I now need to find my purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, would you say that's kind of next in line?
Yeah, I do think that the 5 Ps are not maybe necessarily
In order?
a hierarchy of importance as much as I do think they are in order of how they need to be defined.
Okay.
So I do think purpose.
That's good. It's like not one's not higher than the other.
Yeah, I don't think so because purpose without perspective is going to lead you to an unclear way to execute your purpose.
Yes.
And so like you do have to have all 5. The last P being perseverance, like without that one, who cares? Like,
hey, I'm going to do all these cool things. I believe in this, but
the second that there's conflict, the second that there's difficulty or you get uncomfortable, then you just kind of fade back away into this like meaningless existence. Like without perseverance, none of this matters. So I don't think that there's a hierarchy of one matters more than the rest, but I do think the list is in the right order of how you should define it and how you should start the process, because I don't think that your priorities can be in order without your purpose being first determined. And so purpose is the big picture. It's a 10,000 foot view. It is the thing that you go, I exist for this reason. The 24 hours of my day are intended to fulfill this thing or point to this thing. For many people, that purpose is born out of something more existential, like religious in a sense. It is for me. I know that my purpose certainly is. It's like knowing that life's not about me. Like my purpose is not meant to be lived for myself. My purpose is to point to something bigger. My purpose is founded and rooted in like Christian faith, which I know that even can mean a lot of different things right now. But my purpose is rooted in biblical Christian faith, meaning that I live for the same purpose that Christ lived for when he was present. So that's for me, that's where that's at, is okay, to be a Christian is to be an apprentice of Christ, is to be like Christ. And so the purpose is to pursue that and reflect that. And so for me, it is very existential. It is that intangible thing, but is also the true north, that sense of always kind of guiding you to the right thing. And it is easy to keep things in check. It is easy to look at your even behavior and go, is this like pointing to my purpose or not? And that answer is typically pretty easy as a yes or no. And so the purpose is complicated, and it is the big picture, because you can't just assume someone else's. Like you can't just take on someone else's. No. Like if I were to approach somebody that didn't know anything about like the Christian faith and say, hey man, live for the same purpose I live for, and they immediately decided, okay, yeah, I'll do that, that's going to fall out from under itself at some point because it's not actually theirs. I would hope that it could get there, that it could become personal, that they could take that ownership, they would have that personal experience, but it does have to be a very deep personal conviction within yourself. Otherwise, you are building the framework of literally your entire life on something that is so unsteady and so unstable that it will fall out from under itself. So you can't just take on someone else's purpose. So like, I believe that the strongest foundation of purpose to stand on is faith, unless it's fake. And then it's possibly the worst foundation to stand on. So I would say, like, don't make the purpose of your life this pursuit of faith, unless it's true and unless it's real. And if it's not true, and if it's not real, and you recognize that in your self-assessment, and you look in the mirror and you go, I don't know that I really believe this, then start there. Like, dig into that, have conversations with people you trust, and determine that first, because you got to know what you're building on. Like your priorities don't really matter. Your perseverance is not necessarily that important, because what are you persevering towards?
Exactly.
At that point. And so you got to have that conversation first. Like your purpose is paramount, like in that. And so nobody else can decide that for you. Like people can guide you to it, but I can't live for your purpose and you can't live for mine, even if they are very similar.
Yeah,
right.
So exactly, just because we're totally different people, but knowing that kind of goes in lines with what our purposes are, right? Like that kind of talks.
Yeah.
So another word for purpose for people that maybe it's a little harder for them to understand, it's almost like it's your role. Like, what is your role? Like, and like if you were going to stand in front of a mirror, what would be on your name tag?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's like looking at myself. Here's the outside shell of myself.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm looking at myself. I'm like, okay, my purpose is this. This is what I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, your mission, your marching orders, absolutely. It's just that clear sense of not necessarily personal identity, but like existence identity, I suppose.
If somebody met me, they knew that I lived for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
XYZ.
Yeah, there's a significant clarity on like people know why you walk the earth.
Yeah.
You know, and it does. It sounds dramatic and it sounds very existential because that's exactly what it is, and that's what we as human beings are created to be. Like, so it is
We're
why
complex beings.
Yeah, it is why it is the most important. It's like in our first episode talking about what separates us from other like living organism and other mammals is that sense of that first step, that first purpose. They are like other mammals are created with clear purpose, and they don't have trouble like identifying that. And so. For us, I think we got to lean into that. Like it is paramount. But I think moving into priorities,
exactly.
I don't think you have to wait to define the rest of the P's. If you don't have if you can't put pen to paper on your purpose, that's a lot of P's. If you can't like clearly articulate your purpose, maybe defining your principles and defining your priorities help guide you back to that.
It's kind of full circle.
Yeah, maybe going ahead and developing the rest. If you have like a super clear sense of what the rest of these are, maybe you can write out your priorities, maybe you can write out your principles, and you can go, oh, this is my purpose. I just didn't know it. Yeah. Or by writing these out, so I don't think you have to wait. I just think that like understanding the importance of that strong, just immovable foundation that you are this in the highs and lows. You are this in the good and the bad, in failure and in success, like regardless of result, regardless of outcome, this is who you are. This is how you live. This is why you live. So then I guess the next one would be priorities.
Yeah, next one, priorities. So like this is like, now you can write down this list like, okay, these are my priorities.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these are all the things that I have inside of my pockets now. Right?
Yeah.
Like I have all of these things because these are what I want to take care of.
Yeah. So I do, it is hard because you get different opinions on priority whenever you listen to people talk about it. You can listen to just different researchers talk about priority. You can listen to like behavioral therapists talk about priorities, and you can just listen to critical thinkers talk about priorities. And you do get differing opinions on whether or not you can have more than one priority, because to say priorities almost does kind of disparage or take away from one another. Mm-hmm. And so this is my top priority. Well, I mean, can you have others? And so
Can there only be one?
Right. And so I do think that it's okay to have a list. I just think it needs to be small. And so I think that for me, again, totally stolen. These are all stolen for the most part. So for me, mine are live, love, lead, learn, and lean. Those are my priorities. And so for me, I know what all those mean. For somebody else, that's not going to make any sense. But I have defining sentences of what each of those means. So so to live for me means to be fully present in each moment in light of eternity. So that points it back to my purpose. It's this recognition that knowing that each moment has some sort of eternal impact, has some sort of eternal value, but don't miss the moment.
Yeah.
You just
live in the moment.
Yeah. So absolutely. Just owning the moment. Owning the moment's a huge phrase for me. So,
which it is.
And then for love, and I won't go through all these, but for love, I have family, friends, community, and then, I can't read my own handwriting. But essentially family, friends, and community pretty much covers everybody. And so
which
that
points back to your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's your purpose.
Right.
That's one of the main points of the purpose.
Yep. And then I think that I have the opportunity and the privilege to be put in a position of leadership in different areas. And so leadership is important to me, and to lead people, needs to be one of the most important things for me. And so to lead well is important. And so leading people towards culture with vision, giving them strategies, turning followers into other leaders, just that, that constant sense of like helping elevate other people.
Well, and you don't, and just so everybody knows, you don't have to be in a leadership position
To be a leader, yeah.
to be a leader.
Yeah.
And like, I think a lot of people
Yeah.
don't understand that.
No,
Like,
that's definitely true.
I have 4 children, and my second oldest child is the leader,
Yeah.
not my first child.
Yeah.
Right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My second child helps me day in, day out, making my life easier.
Yeah.
She is a leader. She shows the other children
Yeah.
what to do. And it's like, she's not the leader, quote unquote. She's not the
Right.
oldest child.
Yeah.
But it's like, we can be leaders without being in leadership.
Yeah, and I mean we'll do the whole episode on what it looks like to be, on proper leadership, and and I'm pumped about that because I do think it is so important because, like you said, with a clearly defined purpose, you can lead in any capacity, regardless of title. Title is a garbage way to attain leadership, anyways.
It is.
And so I know plenty of people with leadership titles that don't deserve to lead anyone, and I know plenty of people with no title at all that are solid leaders because they lead by example. So we'll get into that on a podcast, but and then for learn, I mean, that's simple. I'm hungry to learn things, to grow, to not be complacent in what I understand now, but to continue to learn. And then for me, leaning is a big one. And what I mean by that, just because I needed to keep them all L's. So what I put in
OCD.
Yeah, what I put in by that is to lean on both things that are bigger than me. So like for me, it would be to lean on that sense of eternity, to lean on the grace that I have been given in life, to not try to earn it, but to lean into it. And then also very practically to lean into other people. So like that sense of community. So just understanding like the lone wolf gets hungry really quickly. That's almost a cool phrase these days. Like, I'm the lone wolf. Like, no, that's not cool, dude. Like, good luck. And you may seem like a badass now, but we'll see what happens, And so that idea of just lean into the community, lean into the pack, lean into your people. Yep. And so, so those are the priorities for me. And again, like there's no proper way to do that. They can be way more like tangible, I guess, than that, way more practical, however that works for you, but just to know that, to operate with that sense of clarity on, okay, these are the things that I'm going to prioritize. And because of that, my schedule is going to get prioritized around it. So.
Exactly. So me and James were kind of talking about before this. So a great quote that my mom has told me, and I want to say my great grandmother has told her, and I've heard it in a lot of places, is don't spend more than 5 seconds on something that won't matter in 5 years.
Yeah.
So like when you look at your priorities, okay, where am I putting my priorities? It's like, okay, do I really need to focus my energy on this area?
Right.
Is it going to matter in 5 years?
Yeah, and I think that absolutely, and I think that mentality is often what robs us from that opportunity to like really live in the moment and to make an impact in where we are, because oftentimes what we spend our time worrying about is the past, which I understand does impact. It does
gives perspective sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, even like pain comes out of our past, for sure. But for the most part, like in a healthy individual, with somebody with enough self-assessment and self-realization to be able to live with this kind of clarity, there is that freedom from the past controlling you. And honestly, like the past won't matter in 5 years. At least it shouldn't. And if it does, then you've done a poor job.
You haven't shaped it to help you.
Right.
Like gain from it. You've taken...
Yeah.
It's taken you. You haven't taken it.
Yeah. What should matter 5 years from now is what you're doing 5 years from now.
Exactly.
And certainly the impact that you've made along the way. But that's why, when we say past, I think we consider it only negative. Like, oh, it's your past. It's your past. And I'm like, well, your past can be positive too. So in the same ways that you shouldn't allow the negatives from the past to control your present, you also shouldn't live or lean into past success. Like, so again, referencing The Last Dance, because I'm just watching it now because it's on Netflix. What was it that I don't know which player from the Bulls said it, but basically like you're only successful at the moment that you achieve success, essentially. So it's like they had won their first championship.
Is that John Paxson?
I don't remember which one it was. I don't remember which player it was.
Yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was right on the verge of winning the second championship and going like, really, your first one doesn't matter anymore. Like, this only matters if you win now. And so living with that mentality of like, of course, appreciate it. Like, of course, be grateful for the past that exists, both positive and negative. But in that same sense, like what you did 5 years ago successfully doesn't matter now.
Just like you're not going to PR once you get like to a certain percentage.
Right.
PRs come very few and far in between. But life PRs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like there are seasons of life that, I mean, just straight up are going to be better than others.
Yep.
You know, when it comes to just leaning back into what we do with CrossFit, like a lot of the guys that I listen to and a lot of the leaders kind of in our industry, their athletic prime is behind them. Like, they don't compete in the CrossFit Games anymore. They don't lift the same weight. Their Fran time is not the same as it used to be, but they are making a bigger impact now because they're not living based on what they accomplished before.
Nope.
They're doing more with it now. You know, I mean, a great example of that would be even like Dan Bailey, who Games athlete, who's been kind of down for the count due to injury, who is not leaning into his past success, but is living presently in the moment now to make an impact. Like if you follow him, if you're a fan of Dan, like he has stayed in pursuit of that impact. Yeah. And I mean, obviously he's still an unbelievable athlete even now, but like no argument that I don't know this for sure, but I don't think he is as fit as he once was as he's continuing to rehab from injury.
Well, especially not even when we go back in college when he ran track. I mean, it was fast.
Yeah.
But so
it's wild because his biceps are heavy.
They're as big as my head.
Yeah.
And so I was just listening to a podcast, and I actually saw it on Twitter today, or actually I think on Instagram, or somebody it was a tweet from Twitter. He invited a guy to his house. So this is just like being bigger than who you are, right? Like using what you have to help others. This guy on Twitter goes, man, I would never do that. You could never see me doing that. Right? Tweeted and retweeted at him. And Dan Bailey goes, dude, I see that you're from Ohio.
Yeah.
Why don't you just come to my garage and hang out?
That's awesome. Or his barn?
And he came to his barn.
That's cool.
And worked out.
Yeah.
Like it's that sense of putting yourself out there. And like Dan is a Christian athlete. Like he believes in helping other people, and like you can see his purpose and all these things.
Right.
And it's like putting where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, I didn't intend on having that conversation about Dan Bailey, but he is a great example of, like you said, like to your point, and to that quote, like don't let the success of 5 years ago define the success of now either, because that's just a dangerous road to walk down. And maybe that's one of your principles. Like for you, maybe that goes in your principles list.
Yeah. For sure. It's like written on the wall in my head.
Yeah.
And so that directly leads us into principles.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So you've got your purpose, you've got your priorities, and that very much defines, how you spend your time. And then your principles are more that, those really defining things that help you not even like decide which way to go in the forks in the road, in those 35,000 daily forks in the road. They don't just help you decide which way, they almost help you just neglect to even realize that they're there. Like you have such a clarity on where you are going and in who you are that like the decisions almost just disappear.
They're not decisions anymore.
No, it's just you.
It's almost like a set of like guidelines or rules. I don't want to attach the word rules because rules has a very negative connotation.
Yeah, but at the same time, man, I think that because I'm very much like a gray area kind of guy, and I also am. I don't really know what the words would be to define it, because I'm not a big rules guy. Like so I don't know.
He doesn't play Monopoly.
God, that is for sure. But at the same time, I do think that these are the important things. Yeah. Like the do's and don'ts of your behavior are less important than the do's and don'ts of who you are at your level of character. Because your behavior just naturally changes when you define who you are. Yeah. And I heard a quote recently that says, talking about identity, and it said that, your identity is not much of an identity at all if you can maintain it regardless of your behavior. And that is a strong statement. And you can't again, you can't necessarily spiritualize that too much, but when it comes to the tangibles of how you live, like your identity of how you intend to impact the world on a day-to-day basis is not much of an identity if you can do whatever you want with your time, treat people however you want, in whatever capacity, in whatever way, and then still say that you are who you are.
I am this.
Right. Unless who you are is just like a useless, meaningless organism floating through time until you die. Unless like your goal is to be born and then die. So like to arrive safely at death, you know? So
to quote scripture, I mean, it's like, you know, faith without works is dead.
Yes, and I mean, you can spiritualize it, and like, yes, like from an identity perspective, like salvation is secure, but at the same time, like, you know, for me, and we'll have a whole conversation on like the spirituality of humanity as well. But like for me, I think that we are intended to great action. I just don't think those actions are necessarily connected to our good or bad behaviors, like to clean your language up or to follow all the cultural indicatives of what it means to be a whatever.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever you believe in.
Whatever. I think we are very much more impressed upon to action that makes a difference.
That moves the needle.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, I think it has very little to do with behaving a certain way in order to earn something, and it has much more to do with behaving a certain way to change something, or behaving a certain way to elevate something, or, you know, bring a sense of like fulfillment. And so, yeah, absolutely. So these principles are that. These principles are how do you live well into that stuff. And so I have a handful of them, and I'm happy to share them with whoever wants them. But it's just important for you to have them for yourself. And so for me, like one of them is to fail forwards. So it's just that concept of like, don't get stuck, you know, don't get stuck in your past, present, or fear of future failure. Fail forwards. Like, and that means at the most like nasty internal sense, and also like in the practical day to day, you know, you failed in this way, you in your attitude, in your language, and whatever, you failed in this way, in the way that you treated this person. Learn to fail forwards by taking ownership of that, but also fail forwards like in the gym, fail forwards anywhere. So
in all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a handful of them. One of mine is taken from an athlete called, his name's Brian Mazza. I don't know if he and I have anything in common apart from this statement, but he's got like a whole brand titled "Nothing Changes If Nothing Changes," and it's just huge for me. It's like so simple and kind of annoying, but at the same time, it's like, how many people honestly need to say that? You wake up miserable every day because you hate your job. Hey man, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, just have it, like, maybe that's a statement that becomes an honest part of your self-assessment. Yeah. And so I ask myself that question whenever I see that I'm growing in frustration or dissatisfaction or anything like that. So.
Well, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yep, it is, for sure. So, and then, like another big one for me is is the phrase "people are the point." So it's just like relationships first, you know, in business, in fitness, in anything. Don't let anything trump the importance of people. Like, don't take shortcuts that would shortcut people out of the process. Don't steal attention. Don't be selfish in your pursuit of things. And so just being able to say people are the point whenever I'm faced with some decisions help me make decisions that didn't need to be decisions in the first place. So, yeah. So, again, I have a handful of them, and, you know, they can be phrases for you. They can be single words. It's just important that you know how to define them. So, yeah.
Defining is the key thing.
Yeah.
So with those principles, you gain
Perspective.
Perfect
Yeah.
segue into
Yeah.
you gain perspective.
Absolutely. So yeah, perspective is just like allow your perspective to be the glasses you put on.
I was thinking
So-
rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
It's like legit. You put on your glasses, I can see now.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, and I mean it is. It's like it's another P word. It's like it gives you the prescription of the glasses to wear and which in the way you view life. And so because it is just so important like to look at successes and failures through a certain perspective, to look at the rest of the world with a certain perspective. And maybe the first step in gaining a new perspective is to realize that more of the world exists than you realized before. For a lot of people, it's like it exists outside of your city. It exists outside of your community. It exists outside of your bubble. Like there is first world. And the reason there's a first world is because there's third world too. And like maybe you need to consider that. If you don't have the opportunity to experience it, research it, consider it. Like in our like time and culture of just like media like submersion of just like information and just like misplaced information and skewed information, and everybody is a skeptic and everybody is a cynic because you don't know what actually to believe because everyone's pushing their agendas.
Everybody's like saying the exact opposite.
Poverty doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Like child trafficking doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Like coronavirus doesn't exist. Yes, it does. And so like just understanding that your perspective does not have to be primarily against anyone. It just needs to be formed around what actually is the case in the world. And so like the news sucks, man. It just does. Like the news is not a great place to gain perspective. You got to take some actual ownership over that. You've got to dig into some things. And for me, like I think the reason the news sucks even more is because I have had the opportunity to live a life where I have seen some of this stuff face to face, that I know people that have experienced this stuff face to face. I have seen poverty in a really intense sense before, and I have experienced relationship with people who are martyred for their faith. Like it's real stuff that exists. Like, and so I think that sense of perspective is just like, it's your worldview. It's, your worldview helps you understand the small part that you are in it, but should help you be grateful to play a part at all. And so it's really just kind of a motivating factor to like get to work, really. But it also helps you stop being a selfish, westernized human being in which like we're worried about what we're going to wear and, the person that pissed us off at whatever. Because
that
like
traffic light that got cut me off. And,
and the fact that you're unhappy with your car or you wish that you worked a different shift. And like, yes, it does matter. Your day-to-day inconveniences, your day-to-day activity does matter, but also operating in day-to-day life with the sense that legitimately poverty does exist, and also child trafficking does exist, and modern day slavery is a thing. Like operating with that sense of clarity, it does help you frame your perspective of your own ups and downs a little bit more healthily, I guess, like a little bit more effectively. So yeah, perspective is just all about worldview, how you view the world, how you view yourself.
So you gain knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. You've been given this knowledge. Knowledge equals power. Would you say?
Yeah.
Knowledge equals power.
If you do something with it.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Which in turn ends up perseverance.
Where's that from?
Spider-Man.
Oh, nice.
Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben. It is true, though.
So it comes, knowledge is power, and with power comes great responsibility. And so now you must do something with it.
Yeah.
I've now been given this prescription, glasses to put on. I can see the board. I can read what's on the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've gained knowledge.
Absolutely.
But what good is it?
Yeah, it's like,
I don't do anything.
For sure. It's like the smartest coach in the world writing up the game plan and no one being able to execute it. Or it's like you being able to do this and you are able to beautifully articulate all of this and put pen to paper on all of this for yourself, and then you just take a step back and you're like, wow, that looks awesome. Like imagine if I was the kind of person that actually did that stuff.
I'm gonna hang it up.
Yeah,
from right here.
Yeah, and so it's that sense of perseverance, which is absolutely the hardest part. Because to be who you're supposed to be in the midst of 35,000 conflicting decisions every day, and in the midst of human nature and in the midst of our society and culture, to be who you were supposed to be and do what you were supposed to do is absolutely the hardest thing. It is not that hard to do a job. It is not that hard to improve in a tangible capacity or in a tangible aspect. In terms of athletics, in terms of CrossFit specifically, anyone can get stronger. Literally anyone can get stronger. Yep. Millions of people can perform at a high level. Like no one, I'm not gonna say no one, but your influence is not expanded in a grand way because you posted a video of you hitting a PR clean, or of you hitting a PR Fran time, or the fact that you can row 500 meters in a minute 20. Like, that's cool. I'm very impressed by that. I am proud of people who are able to do that, but that eternally doesn't hold up. The fact that you're the type of person that pursues those things, the fact that you're the type of person that can achieve those things because of your principles, because of your priorities and your core values, because that is who you are, I expect that you are also the kind of person that's able to impact other people very effectively. And so you let your performance be the thing that elevates you. Again, I mean, referring, because he's the best, I mean, he just is one of the best athletes that's ever walked the planet. Referring to The Last Dance, Michael Jordan was talking about like all the success he had in contracts and the episode about the first Air Jordans. And he's like, man, it wouldn't matter if I didn't put the work in on the court. Like, I think his statement was like, if I was, averaging 3 points and 2 rebounds or whatever a game.
Nobody would buy my shoes.
Nobody's buying Air Jordans, because there's nothing impressive. So like, absolutely put the work in. But the reason that he was worth emulating is because he was the type of person that performed well on the court.
Yep.
Day in, day out. Yeah. And so it's like back to that episode with Noah that we did about like operating with a sense of selfless success, letting that be your persevering method to pursue success, but not to be selfish with your success, and to do it when it gets hard. And it doesn't mean work out when you're tired. That is part of perseverance. Yes. It means make the hard decisions. It means when the fork in the road is actually difficult, choose the thing that is congruent and consistent with your priorities, with your principles. Persevere through that. Stay engaged, stay in the fight, figure out why in the world you're fighting. That's your purpose. Again, referring back to that, like fighting for absolutely no reason. I mean, if that's what we're going to call life, is this like basically this fight that we are in. Why are you fighting? Because as you fatigue, it's going to be hard to keep fighting if you don't know why. Exactly. And so again, like it's the start with why concept is that's the purpose. And then it's just stay in the fight at that point. Understand that your purpose is big enough. And man, if your purpose is to PR all of your lifts, or if your purpose is to be a high performing athlete, that's cool. I'm just saying it's fickle.
There's more.
It's transient. You're going to hit it and then it's going to go away.
Yep.
It's got to be bigger than that. So persevere towards something that's going to outlive you even at that point. So yeah, it's been big for me. So that's all 5 of those.
It's funny you say that. So it's like today, my youngest daughter wanted to start cleaning the floor right after I got done because she saw me cleaning the floor.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing when people are not watching, but the people are really watching? It's kind of like,
right.
What do you do when nobody's watching?
Yeah.
I kind of ask myself that, and that's kind of like to end this kind of segment. It's like, what do I do when nobody else is around? Mm-hmm. Am I the person that I say that I am when everybody else is around? And
that is probably the space that you are going to fail the most, is when nobody else is around. Yep. And there is a need for perseverance even in that. I think that that's huge, man. I think that in the safety of your own home, in the safety of your most, your closest relationships, that's the easiest place to fail. And you will fail in those areas. And so you need to create even a sense of culture within yourself and a culture within those spaces that help you fail forwards in that, because you will, when no one's watching, you will probably struggle the most in that capacity. And that's okay. Fail in it. That's fine. Just understand when you take responsibility. And then I think you'll begin to realize that making the right decisions, making the right impact when people are watching is so much more satisfying. When you go, man, when people aren't watching, whenever I wouldn't garner a sense of celebration, or when nobody's going to tell me good job, I would do this anyways. that's huge. You know, that allows those times that you do make an impact positively for people to see actually worthwhile, because it has integrity at that point. It's
because
true.
you already know internally
you,
when
yeah.
it's already, what's already there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, you know, I guess to end it, one of your principles has to have something to do with that sense of, you know, patience, or if grace makes sense to you, or you know, that idea of failing forward is like one of your principles has to be that, because you will fail more often than you succeed. And so like if you can if you had to burn this piece of paper the second that you strayed away from your 5 Ps, if you had to burn the paper and start all over, like there wouldn't be enough paper in the world. Mm-hmm. Like you couldn't write this out enough times, because you will fail so often in adhering to this stuff. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. You know, it helps you transition back, you know, refix that perspective and keep going, keep making an impact, and clearly move forward. So, because that's why, I mean, that's our vision for this. So
exactly. Just keep moving forward. So that's if you want some
candy.
Some what?
Candy?
Yeah. I'm totally spaced there for a second. If you want help creating your 5 Ps, or doing it at creating, please reach out to us. And then making sure that you're using the BMI, the build, the manage, and the iterate. Like
the only BMI that matters.
The only BMI that matters, baby. Yeah. We'll see you next episode.